Hey, what's going on, guys? In today's video, we're going to be checking out the Hasbro Marvel's Spider-Man. This is Hobgoblin. Before we have a look at the figure, let's figure out how tall Hobgoblin stands. The figure is about 5.5 inches in height. To also show you how he stacks up against the wall crawler, there he is next to the knapsack slash backpack slash somewhat hokey Spider-Man that we just recently looked at. Hobgoblin is a little bit taller and a little bit more straight, it seems, as a figure. Spider-Man, at the very least, has the wider stance and wider arms. Hobgoblin instead seems very straight, like his legs are just straight down. But there are the two figures side by side. It would make some sense that Hobgoblin is a little bit taller than Spider-Man, and he is. I haven't watched nearly enough of the new Marvel's Spider-Man to know enough about Hobgoblin here. I mean, looking at him, I would think he is Green Goblin myself, and I did look at some clips of Hobgoblin, which he was sporting a rather distinctly different costume, something with more yellows. It almost looked like he had a gas mask on. It doesn't look like this, so I'm not really sure what has happened and why this guy is not the Green Goblin, but we're going to stick with the fact that he is called, according to the package, Hobgoblin. He comes with a bunch of accessories here, and they're all pretty much the same. It's these pumpkin bombs. They are very long and very rubbery, and they're supposed to be shot out from his hand. Not the most successful of things, I have to admit. He kind of relies on the old kind of superpowers gimmick, where there's a little button on the back here. You can press it, and he throws things. Doesn't throw things all that well, I have to admit, but all of this can be worked by just pressing this button on the back here. And he's supposed to throw. So really what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to take the pumpkin bomb and put it into his hand like so, and then you're supposed to press the button on the back, and he's supposed to throw it. Now, mileage may vary. You may want to bring the arm a little further back. Press the button again, and it's pretty weak. The gimmick is weak. The mechanism is equally weak, I suppose, but a very, very weak, sad sort of gimmick. If not displayed, if you don't want to display them all in his hand, he has these little holes in the back here, which it's not the easiest to even get them in place. You almost have to feed them through and then grab them from the bottom and pull them through until you get them all lined up into the hole there. Same idea with this one here, and same idea with the one on the end. Just going to pull them through. They look really ridiculous. Looks like tadpoles, bright neon tadpoles sticking out the back of Hobgoblin here. They're not the easiest to fit through. I feel like I'm going to eventually rip them, pulling them through like that, all to get them to display like this. I would ask the question, why couldn't these have been shorter, or at the very least, why couldn't the pumpkin bombs just have been on their own? I'm certain that that would have allowed him to throw it a little bit easier if these were a little bit shorter, and ultimately now you've just got all this excess sticking out from the back. Speaking of back, there is his backpack there. It doesn't appear to be removable. It's something that's just attached to the figure there. So it's a bit of an eyesore, and I suppose at the very least, from the front you're not going to see it as much, other than you're going to see these big noticeable spheres of neon orange. What they almost should have done too is they should have made the knapsack wider and actually made it the glider. So if you weren't using the gimmick, which would be then impossible because obviously it would have to have attached to his arm, you could then take that off and he could have used it as a glider. I get though that it has to all be connected to one another, but it supplies you with such the most ridiculous, useless sort of gimmicks on these figures. I mean, Spider-Man's backpack was weak. This is much, much weaker. So, there you go. Go ahead, I suppose, and take these all out. I feel like they're gonna bother me. I'll show you, by the way, how they're very stubborn to get out. Let's try, just for the sake of saying that we've tried. I'm gonna try it one more time to press the button on the back and wish me luck. Let's hope it actually does something this time around. Okay, thank you. Now we can put this to bed. Never talk to them again. We'll put this to the side. Okay, so having a look at Hobgoblin, even though he does look like Green Goblin, and even though I don't watch enough of the cartoon to know any reasoning why he looks like Green Goblin, he's not a bad-looking Hobgoblin. Green Goblin. The face sculpt is really nice, actually. I like the big eye versus the contrast of the smaller eye. He's got a very devilish-looking face sculpt to him. I really do like that. Nice rubbery ears on the sides. They're actually a bit of a denser plastic than I was expecting. The hat could have been longer, but again, I'm only going by what I like in a Green Goblin, and it's obviously, it's not Green Goblin, it's Hobgoblin. Dang nabbit, I just want to keep calling him Green Goblin. But a nice face sculpt overall. Not much in the way of paint, mind you. They've just slapped on some orange around the eyes, slapped some white on his teeth. They could have gone in and add some additional paint, but to be fair, Spider-Man didn't really have that, so why am I expecting so much from Hobgoblin? I'm going to keep trying my best to say Hobgoblin. Coloring on the rest of his body relies on purples that we've so come used to when it comes to one said villain. I'm not going to mention his name. And then they mix it up with some grays, which actually looks quite cool, I like. I do think that's pretty cool. I like that. It's got sort of a tech sort of armor to it, and it got some panel lines all running through the gray areas, and equally so also in the purple area. The purple, luckily, somewhat matches the hat, even though it's not quite the same shade, but it's passable that you would imagine that this would be more the mask, and then this would be more like armor or like a bodysuit. So it's close enough if you think of it more like that. This would be like shiny metal, I suppose. It's got some nice darker gray areas in there as well, so it's not all primarily the lighter gray and purple, and then that's it. You get blessed with a little bit of additional orange in there as well. Not a bad looking figure. At the very least, he looks good, even though practically he just doesn't do the job, the service that he should be doing with the gimmick. It's rather ridiculous. He also does seem to always have his arm sticking forward. Again, that's just the way that the gimmick works. It becomes much more useless the further the arm goes down, but kind of like the old superpower figures, you can click the arms in different ranges. Might give you a better swing if he is throwing the pumpkin bombs. Now, I don't like overly stacked pre-posed figures in which the legs are, slightly bent, the arms are slightly bent. But at the very least, the figure would have looked a lot cooler if they had been able to just sculpt the figure with his legs more spread, and maybe just the arms slightly bit more spread. One thing that drives me absolutely bananas is when a figure is just straight. Let me explain that. So, going back to Spider-Man, Spider-Man is he is a pretty staction figure. You can move his shoulders, you can move his legs, you can move his head, but that's all you're really going to be able to get from him. But if you compare the two, as we discussed at the beginning of this review, see how Spider-Man's got wider leg stance and he's got a wider arm gap, I suppose, if you will. And then you look at Hobgoblin. If they had only stretched the legs out just a little bit more, just kind of like that, brought the arms out just a little bit more, it just gives a personality to an otherwise somewhat bland articulated figure. That's what I meant by that. Speaking of his articulation, we'll move Spider-Man out of the way. His head rotates quite easily around, hinge up and down. The one arm, except for the fact it stops, of course, at the knapsack, the backpack area here. If not for that, the arm would be able to rotate all the way around. No swivel or anything like that. You got a very soft sort of plastic happening here in the arms. And of course this arm is all gimmick, so you really can't do too much with that. Legs do this. That's all they do. Going back again to the idea, peg holes on the undersides of his feet. I don't know what their long-term plan is for that. It's almost as if they're making a figure knowing that they're shortchanging you on display stands. Why even, if a figure doesn't come with a display stand, why put peg holes on the undersides of his feet? It's almost as if they're teasing you. They're giving you basically a picture of what dessert's going to look like, but they never bring it to your table. It's a bit of a tease. Not a bad looking goblin. I might even just leave off Hob altogether. Not a bad looking goblin, but the gimmick here is absolutely useless on him. Solely on the merits of the design of this character, I do like the look of it. It doesn't have a whole lot of coloring to it, but the coloring for the most part is done well. To be fair, a lot of it is just molded plastic. There's very little paint that's been added to him other than the purple areas. The rest is all just relying on gray plastic. I like the head sculpt. Still not sure why he's called Hobgoblin and not Green Goblin. But I think what ruins this figure is a poor gimmick. I feel as if one thing that's going to ruin this line is poor gimmicks. Spider-Man's gimmick wasn't terrible. It didn't bog down the figure. You could still play with the Spider-Man and get full movement in his arms. He had limited posability, yes, but it's still, you could move his arms. Hobgoblin, unfortunately, is relegated to a swinging arm action, which half the time just doesn't work with the very long, obnoxiously long pumpkin bombs that he comes included with. At the very least, they put holes in the back of his knapsack, so if you don't want to display him with the pumpkin bombs, you could sort of pretend that he has a pumpkin bomb launching backpack, which would almost have been cooler than the pumpkin bomb throwing arms that they ended up giving this guy. Pick him up if you have been picking up the new Spider-Man, the Marvel Spider-Man cartoon series figures. I think he's pretty weak. His design is good, but unfortunately suffers badly from a really poor executed gimmick. Today we were having a look at the new Hasbro. This was the Marvel's Spider-Man, and this was Hobgoblin. Don't even know why he's called Hobgoblin, but I haven't watched too much of the series, so I really don't know. Make sure you hit that little subscribe button down below, bunkos, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as it will open the door to new subscriptions, new subscription pop-ups in your feed, specifically from this guy here. You'll never miss a beat when it comes to future videos if you hit that little subscribe button down below. And speaking of new videos, there's always new videos coming onto this channel, so keep your eyes peeled. I never like saying that. It always sounds so gross. Peeled eyes. Oof. What a way to wrap up this video. Peeled eyes aside, guys, more videos are coming your way. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.